Hello, and thank you so much for joining Family Circle today to talk about how to motivate your kids to do absolutely anything. We have 8 scenarios that we're running down, so you will get your answers today. My name is Lynya Floyd. I am the health director at Family Circle magazine, and I am here with Leslie Josel. She is a professional organizer. She is the author of What's the Deal with Teens and Time Management? And she is the owner of Order Out of Chaos, orderoochaos.com. And she is going to be revealing all of the answers to questions that you sent in on Facebook and also some of the most common questions that she gets when it comes to motivating kids. So thank you so much for revealing everything, helping moms not pull their hair out, helping them from saying the same thing over and over
again, and banging their head against the wall and getting nowhere. No, we're gonna throw back the curtain today, and we're gonna dive deep, and we're gonna give everybody some really good answers.
Love it. All right, so let's start off with the very first question, which is, how do I get my kid to start their homework?
I'm just laughing because that is probably the question I hear all day, every day, in emails and phone calls and everything. So what I want to talk about, though, which we don't really talk a lot about, is environment.
Huge. Environment is so huge.
People don't realize that environment actually speaks to you, and it's one of the main key ingredients on how you get stuff done. So think of yourself, if you walked into your office, and it was dark and there were no windows and it was just bleak and dreary. Would you want to go in there and do anything? No. You wouldn't. I don't think you would. No. My office is bright and cheery. It's orange. It has my favorite pens. It has all the things that make me happy. So what we tell parents to do is try to create that environment for your child. Maybe they're into pens and paper. They're very tactile, and they need that to get motivated. Or maybe it's music. Music is fantastic. When you hear music, it engages the brain to get going. Maybe they love the color orange too, and they want to paint like one wall in your kid's room orange. That's their homework wall. So that type of environment, that type is what we call an external motivator that is speaking to you to start getting something done.
I love that. So going all the way from big, transforming the space, the paint color, and how that can impact your mood, which I did also within my home, but also small details. The pen that you're using.
The pen that you're using.
I have a fancy pen that I use sometimes.
And I'm all about the pens, right? But I want to also talk about music, because if your child listens to music, music can actually be one of the best motivators for you to initiate. So one of my favorite tips, particularly if you have young children, is, let's say you have multiple kids, you can actually put them together, let's say at your kitchen table, the dining room table, and put music on in the house. It doesn't matter what kind of music, depends on your family, but what it does is it signals to everyone, this is now time to do homework. We hear the music, we start. So I know for me, I like to walk on a treadmill, or I like to do some elliptical. I have disco on my, now everybody knows, I have disco. But when I hear my disco, what does it signal to me? To get moving, to get started. It's the same thing for students. So my tip for older students is have them create a 30-minute playlist. And they're going to play that playlist over and over again, but only when they do homework. So they start equating the music with getting work done. That association.
Yeah.
So it's a really good, again, motivation to get them going.
Great. So you're also tapping into a lot of different senses, right? Visual cues with the paint colors, tactile with the pen and the paper, but I also like the auditory cue of the music
100%.
As well. And I noticed that there are a lot of classical focus stations when you go on like Spotify or whatever.
Sure.
And, it automatically knows classical music. Are you doing something? Okay, classical focus.
But not every kid actually. This is funny.
Will respond to that?
No, I actually, and I'm going to call my son out. There were times when my son would be listening to the Book of Mormon when he was little. I have kids that are listening to the Beatles. I have kids that are listening to Hamilton.
Yeah.
It's what's going to work. The point of it is that the same music then starts to become that white noise.
Gotcha.
But it's signaling, music actually helps us to attend, to focus, and to initiate.
Okay. Now, those are the positives of the environment. You also talked about how maybe an environment where you don't want to be can push you to get something done.
So this is a little unconventional, but I have a lot of students that do this, and it works for them. So here's what we want to do with our students. So what we want them to do is maybe not come home. So that's an interesting.
Don't come home.
Okay, so this is what I mean by that. I know for me, when I pull into the driveway, I sometimes stay in my driveway to do my emails and my phone calls, because when I walk into my house, I start to lose interest. So kids tell me that when they stay in their environment at school, they're more apt to get stuff done. They're more apt to actually, stay there and be still in that school focus, because something happens to them when they come home.
Right.
So keeping them a little uncomfortable is what I like to say.
Or even the library you mentioned.
The library could even be a coffee house, school, but bringing them home sometimes, all of a sudden, the energy drains, and now to be able to remotivate. Right, exactly. So if you can, leave your kid out of the house. Forget to pick them up and see what happens.
They might get their homework done.
Right, they might get their homework done.
All right, so let's move on to how do I get my kid to clean their room? And this was the umbrella for everything that people were talking about. Picking up the socks, putting the laundry actually in the bin. Why are there stacks of everything everywhere? So,
okay,
what is the key there?
The key or rule, number one, is managing the expectation.
Yes.
So you might say to your child, go clean up your room. And you know exactly what you want them to do.
Oh, yeah.
But the question, listen to you. Oh, yeah, I know exactly what they want to do. But do they know what you want them to do? So I have the student that will walk into the room, take one piece of clothing, put it in the hamper, and go, I'm done. And walk out of the room.
It's clean.
So it's clean. It's all good. Looks good to me, right? So you have to manage the expectation. You need to be super duper clear on what you're asking them. So going and saying clean up your room is not good enough. We need to be going Legos off the floor, books on the shelf, clothes in the hamper. And it has to be done, I like to say, almost like in sound bites. We call it cubby sizing information. If you start giving information in long sentences and long prose, they start to forget it. So short direction, Legos, books, giving them a list. So this way when they walk in that room, they know exactly what you're asking them to do. And the other thing I really like, particularly for younger kids, is directions versus lists.
Okay, what does that mean?
Okay.
Directions versus lists.
So in my world, I think lists are clutter, okay, because we start to glaze when we see a list. So what I like is directions. And if you have a younger student, you can even take photos of them in action. So a student maybe with Legos on the floor. Now you have the Legos in the bin. Now you show them with the Legos on the shelf.
Gotcha.
Clothes on the floor, clothes in the hamper, maybe the hamper on top of the washing machine.
Gotcha.
Taking photos for a younger kid actually shows them the process, and therefore they're more apt to initiate it and be motivated to get it done.
Okay, so that'll work for the little kids, bigger kids, just be very clear about
Very clear.
Managing those expectations.
Super, super clear.
Okay, and then you also talked a little bit about the when-then scenario.
You liked
How
that.
can parents use that when-then scenario?
So what we always want to do,
That's motivation for you.
Hugely motivation, but it's also a little sneaky.
Yes.
Right? It's a little it's sneaky. It's subtle. It's not banging them over the head saying you have to or you're not going to get to do.
Okay.
So when then is, when you clean up your room, then you can go see, go down the street to go hang out with Bobby, or, when you get that laundry folded, then you can go play Xbox. You're not actually setting up, you're also not asking them a question, which they can say no to.
Okay.
You're implying that it's going to happen.
Okay.
You're just saying when you do it. Then
carrot. There's that carrot.
There's that carrot, but it's subtle. It's not heavy-handed, and yet they're not feeling this like, you're nagging or you're demanding. So it's a little less, I think it's a little easier.
Okay.
I like the when then.
Yeah. All right.
Like the sneaky chef who shoves like zucchini in the brownie.
All right, third scenario.
Okay, here we go.
For all the moms out there whose kid gets to school and they're missing something from their backpack, or they're missing something from their workout bag or what have you, how can we get these kids to pack those bags completely and pack them on their own for school or for sports?
All right, I'm pushing up my sleeves for this
one. Okay.
Right?
All right.
All right. Because this one's a little different than what we've been talking about, because this actually goes to the remembering part of our brain. So what we're really talking about is building a habit. It's really getting your child to remember what goes in that bag, what goes in my lunch. So you have to do two different things. You first have to model the behavior. And for young kids, what I really like is acting it out. Show me how you pack your bag for lunch, or show me how you pack your dance bag. Then once they really know exactly what is going into that bag, then what I like is guided questioning. And I call that prompting behavior.
I love that.
So instead of you like that?
I love that. And I use that with one of my godkids.
You
It's like,
did.
what do we need
What
for
do
ballet?
we need? Right, what do we need? So I don't know about you all, but I used to be the parent, and if either one of my kids are watching, they will tell you yes. It was, do you have your knapsack? Do you have your phone? Do you have your wallet? Do you have your keys? Do you have your lunch? Do you have your clarinet? Do you want to throw up? Okay, and I'm sure all of you out there are nodding your head and going, that's me. So what you want to do is make sure they understand exactly what it is that they have to bring or do, and then you're going to prompt them. Do you have everything you need? What is it that you need to bring today?
Right.
And what they're doing is they're creating that mental checklist. Now, you might have to support them with a visual prompt. Maybe
Okay.
it's an index card that's attached to the soccer bag.
Love that.
Don't you love that? Right there for them.
That's a list. I know you hate lists, but
But small, cubby size,
Cubby size.
cubby.
Okay. All right.
Or maybe on top of the fridge, lunch, what goes in your lunch. And even for a younger kid, you can even walk them through those steps. Tell me what you eat first. What's the first thing you eat at lunch? What's the second thing? But the biggest point, or the biggest takeaway here is we want to first model behavior,
Yes.
and then we want to prompt the behavior.
Right.
And then hopefully we've built the habit, and they can go off and do it on their own.
and there's a lot of visualization that's happening there, the way that you're describing it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Mental checklists.
Mental checklist. Awesome. So let's step back for a little bit and talk a little bit about the barriers to getting these things done in general, so that regardless of us sitting here, moms and dads out there can figure out what they need to do. So there's a difference between motivation and procrastination and just forgetting when it comes to these things not happening, right? What's the difference there?
Okay, so I know we don't have a ton of time, so I'm
Yes.
going to try to be really quick in kind of explaining. Procrastination, I mean, we can talk all day about procrastination, but what's very interesting about procrastination, it's actually mood-based. It can be mood-based, I should say. There's many reasons behind it. But if you have a child that's actually saying to you, I'm not in the mood, it's actually real. So our brains sometimes feel that we have to, okay, follow me here, have to get into this happy, pretty place.
Love that.
Right?
I'm
I always say
never
that.
in the mood to clean.
Right, you're never in the mood. So it doesn't necessarily even mean for students. So if you have a child who can, think of a fork in the road. They can go left down the dark and twisty. The dark and twisty might be homework. Some it might be chores. And then they can go right. Right could be playing basketball outside, or talking with a friend, or online shopping, or video games. They're going to say, I need to do something that's going to make me feel good first and get into this really good mood before I can then tackle the thing I don't want to do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what happens is that never really happens. And then they actually feel worse about themselves because now they've wasted an eon amount of time. So when it comes to procrastination, we try to create motivating forces, which is where motivation and procrastination kind of come in.
Yes.
So environment, we talked about,
Right.
is very key. I don't always feel that motivation has to come from you. So setting goals. Understanding exactly what it is someone is expecting of you.
Yes.
If someone else is actually doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah, managing
So that's
those expectations.
kind of motivation and procrastination.
Yes.
Now,
Forgetting.
forgetfulness, I mean, it's all brain-based, but it's really, not to get so technical, is actually like our working memory. It's how do we remember things. So you might have a student at home who went to math class at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they learned a bunch of formulas. Now it's 8 o'clock at night. You know where I'm going with this.
I know exactly where you're going
Right?
with that.
And you're going to open up that math book. It's 12 hours later, and they're going to look and say, I'll never learn this. And in some ways, they're right. It's that boomerang effect. It came in and went back out. So we're always looking for ways to super glue. That's what I want you all to image that.
Super gluing.
glue into your kid's brain information they need to know so that they can then take it out when they have to.
Awesome. Awesome. All right.
So I did that in 2 minutes.
We actually have a question.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Let's do a question.
So Brenda wants to know, how can she motivate her son to stop playing video games and go outside and play instead?
Ooh. So we had that's actually on the list, but let's fast
Should we
forward
go for
ahead.
that
Yeah,
one?
let's answer Brenda's question.
So what I'm going to say to you about video games make me sweat. When people ask me about video games, 'cause
tough.
it's loaded.
They're built to keep you playing.
They're built, and it's just loaded with so many other like things behind it. You know
Yes.
that. So there's not a one size fits all. But this is what I will say: Are your guidelines in your house super clear? Do you have an exact schedule? Do you have a quiet hour where everyone in the house is dark? You know, we used to have that in my house growing up, not my house, meaning my kids, so that there were no screens for everybody. So that made it easier to get my kids outside to play.
That's a great idea. I wonder how many people do that.
So-
I mean, I know people do it during dinner time sometimes, but to have a
But we had it instead of along without
Yeah.
dinner, so it was a quiet hour. It was a silent hour. There, not quiet meaning we could all talk,
Right.
But there were no
No
television, no
electronics.
electronics, no phones. So it did help getting my kids to actually. Now my kids weren't outside kids, and that's fine. But it helped them to do other things, whether it was practice an instrument or even play with Legos.
Yeah.
Just something else other than that. And the other thing is, if you do have parameters, make sure that there's actually some type of timer next to your child so that they actually do see the time elapse. And then this is where I actually like, and this is something that Brenda could use at home, it's something called illusion of choice.
Oh yeah, that's great.
I know, you love this. Again,
That's
it's
another
like-
one that I love. Yes.
Right. So I like that a parent sets the parameter and the child negotiates it. So perhaps, Brenda, you could say to your child, what time between 4 and 4:30 are you going to come upstairs and shut the video games off and go outside? You're basically setting the parameter of you have to be done with the video between 4 and 4:30, but you're leaving the choice within that parameter to your child, and now almost telling them something that they should be doing without, again, knocking their head over with it.
Right.
So I'm a big illusion of choice girl. Big
Love it.
illusion of choice.
Love it.
Because you can use it with everything. You can use it with homework.
Yes.
What time are you going to start your homework between 4 and 5? What time are you going to clean your room? What time are you going to take out the garbage between?
Yeah. I have a friend who does it with food. Would you like apples or bananas?
Right.
You know, all good choices.
Well, I know we didn't really talk, but you know, it's funny you brought that up. And for those of you at home that have children that have a hard time making big decisions, so I never asked my son what he wanted for dinner because it was too big a choice.
Right.
So again, illusion of choice. Do you want the red or the blue? Do
Yes.
you want the fried chicken or the spaghetti and meatballs? So they still feel empowered and in control,
But not overwhelmed.
but not overwhelmed.
Yeah. Great.
Thanks, Brenda.
All right, so just as a reminder to everyone, my name's Lynya Floyd. I'm health director at Family Circle Magazine. I am here with Leslie Josel, who is the owner of Order Out of Chaos, orderoochaos.com. She is also the author of What's the Deal with Teens and Time Management? She's a professional organizer, and she is answering a ton of questions today about how to motivate your kids to do absolutely anything. Next question on the list, how do I get my kid to wake up in the morning on their own?
You're really giving me hard ones
They're
today.
toughies, and I
Okay.
know there are parents out there that are pulling the sheets off the bed and that are yelling and that are blasting music. So how can you do that without losing your inner zen? How do you get them to do it on their own?
I don't know if you can do it without losing your inner zen. Listen, if I had the perfect answers for everything, I would not be here right now. No, I'm kidding. Well, here's, again, something I say, like, are you supporting your child where they need to be supported?
Right.
So let's talk about what is actually in the room in the morning. How many alarm clocks do you have? Where are they? Are they next to the bed? Do they have a snooze? Do they have music? And if you've answered yes to any of them, no, no, no. Meaning loud, horrible alarm, no snooze, no music, and
All the way on the other
all
side.
the way on the other side.
Of the room.
They make alarm clocks that literally jump off a nightstand and that you have to get out of bed and follow it around.
I've seen those.
So I love those because now your kid is up and now they're up and awake. But there's two other points that I want to make about getting up in the morning. Getting up in the morning for me always has to do with the night before. So for your younger kids, for some of them, if you can prepare as much the night before, it actually makes the morning easier and less overwhelming, and they're more apt to get up. So if the book bag is by the door, breakfast is laid out, clothes are chosen, then what they have to do in the morning is not that overwhelming.
Yeah.
So they can get up, they can move through the morning rather quickly.
Gotcha.
And then the other thing I would be asking is, what is your child doing before bed? Are they going to sleep with their laptop, phone, iPad, and everything else under the covers? So what's happening in your house the night before? Are we shutting things down, or are we charging phones and electronics outside the room so that the child is sleeping decently so that they can get up in the morning?
Gotcha.
I think that's a good question.
Yeah, I think
ask.
that's great too, because it's two different times of day. It's that point of performance that you were
Exactly.
talking about, and making sure that the morning moves very smoothly and
Very
doesn't feel like
smoothly.
you're climbing a mountain just to
Right.
get out of bed, because there's so many things to do. But also, what's happening the night before, and how are you setting yourself up for success in the morning?
Exactly. Right, because all of those things come into play in the
Yeah.
morning, and I think the morning makes us so emotional because there's a deadline in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, when I look at all the questions we've asked,
Yeah.
nothing else is that immediate. So if your child cleans their room a half an hour later, so if they get off the Xbox 15 minutes later, there's not this like crisis mode, but the
Yeah.
morning has an expiration date.
It sure does.
It does. So